Welcome to this talk about what is an LXP. So today we're going to be addressing what on earth it is. Oh, hello. Is that supposed to happen? I'm gonna crack on. So what is an LXP, how it's evolved, and what sort of features you should normally see involved in an LXP. So before I start, a little bit about myself. So I am the Chief Customer and Product Officer at Thrive, which basically means that I look after the entire customer experience. I'm back on, great. Um, and also I look after the product team, which what that means is the last year or so I have had a really amazing opportunity to build an LXP completely from scratch. So I've done an awful lot of research around that area and I wanted to share what I found with you today. And now I sort of continue to lead the vision on our LXP. And my previous careers, started my career at Kineo, and then moved on to Fuse, and I've also worked on client side in internal L&D, which was a very interesting experience being on the other side, but really, really valuable. But enough about me. I thought a really good place to start would be what is an LMS, because I think as we sit here today, we probably all think we know what an LMS is, but when you really properly break it down to the actual definition, this is a definition I found online, you can actually really clearly see some of the big differences. So as you can see here, LMS is about managing learning. It's about admin, tracking, reporting. It's about making sure that people do the right thing at the right time and you can tick all the boxes, which I'm sure is nothing new. You've heard all this before. But I think it's really important to make that differentiation. LMSs are traditionally focused on admins, so it's about how can we support the administrator to prove what they need to do. You'll notice there is nothing in here about the end user, and there's nothing really in here about learning, in the sense that there's stuff about pushing, training, courses, programs, but not about the actual learning part, and I have learned something, if that makes sense. So I thought it was a good place to start, and then from there I want to look at, okay, so why an LXP? Why has this come about? What happened with this evolution, and why are we moving into this new space? So I think naturally things evolve over time, obviously, and the LXP is what's come out of that. And I guess the question I want to ask is, has it come out because LMSs don't do their jobs very well, or has it come out because of environmental changes and it's just LMSs are not relevant anymore? And I guess what I'm pointing to is that there are environmental changes here to focus on. So the first one I want to look at is user-generated content. This is quite arguably, I think, the biggest change over the last 10 years in how we communicate, how we learn, and just generally how we interact in our daily lives. UGC now is more trusted than other traditional media, as you can see on screen here, and that is a huge amount. And it's totally true. I mean, think about all the UGC you use in your daily lives. Think about times where you haven't gone to a restaurant because it's got a bad review, or where you've gone onto YouTube or something to actually look at what products are actually like in reality rather than what the brands say they're like. It's really, really important, and we absolutely trust it. And even things like retail sites, so lots of fashion retail sites will allow people to upload pictures now of them wearing the clothes. You totally trust that more than the perfectly lit, amazing photos that the brands make, because the brands have an agenda. Absolutely, they have an agenda. They're trying to sell you products, whereas the end user stuff doesn't have an agenda. And this completely applies to the way we learn, right? So if I want to learn, this is a real example, how to build a small house for my dog under the stairs, I'm not going to book onto a woodworking course that's in 2 months' time, and it's not really what I need anyway. I'm going to YouTube. I'm going straight to YouTube because there's someone there who's done it before. I get all that great experience and I get it instantly. YouTube is the biggest learning resource we have to hand now, and I actually think that it's somewhat lowered our expectations of learning in the sense that we don't mind now if a video is a bit shaky or if someone forgets what they're saying. As long as the message is getting across, it's absolutely fine. So UGC has actually lowered our expectation of what content looks like, which is really interesting. So this is big, big impact on the learning world. Speaking of expectations, in some ways our expectations have actually increased in other areas. So this is our consumer expectations. Think about how we interact with brands and products in our personal lives. So this is the experience that we receive from those products. So that could be buying products online, and also personalization. So some really great stats here, 84% of consumers say they're being treated as a person, and not a number, is very important. We get that all the time. Things like Netflix recommendations, Spotify, even like health and well-being, how we track that. Everything is personalized. Everything's a beautiful experience. So why is it that in our personal lives, when we're generally doing, let's say, more fun things, we get this great experience, there's great personalization. But at work, we expect people to use these old, archaic systems for, let's face it, not such fun things, or not all the time anyway. So consumer expectations definitely shifted, and that we do expect more, so better experiences at work. And what we need to be doing is providing those experiences, but also removing all barriers to the way people learn and barriers to actually getting your job done at work. So rather than having that classic, you're on the phone to a call center and someone always says like, oh, the system won't load. That always happens to me when I'm on call centers, and I think, oh, why do they have these horrible tools, these poor people? So consumer expectations has dramatically changed. And the third one seems really obvious, and it is true. There have been advancements in technology over the last 10 years or so, what have you. But actually, it's quite an interesting one, because a lot of this technology that we use now to provide things like personalizations, a better experience, is not actually new stuff, particularly in the academic world. I mean, you can see here that the first item-based collaborative filtering algorithm, this is basically what Amazon use and all other sorts of that to recommend things. So that was designed by Amazon in 1998. It's quite a long time ago. That then had a massive boost with a thing called the Netflix Prize. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but essentially Netflix, when they first started, said, sort of challenged the world, or developers really, to say, if you can increase our efficiency of our algorithm by 10%, you get a massive cash prize. And it was an amazing experiment, I guess, because what happened, or the outcome of it, was that you had all this massive worldwide collaboration around these sorting algorithms. And so some really great discoveries came out of it, not just from the team who won, but just in general. So there was a huge advancement very quickly in how we actually can personalize data and recommendations and that sort of thing. And the third thing I should mention on that is we just have a lot of data nowadays. There is just so much of it floating around. And I think if we didn't have technology that allowed us this better personalization, we would just be dying. We'd be swimming in data, literally. Like, I think it wouldn't even be possible to just do your shopping online without some form of personalization anymore. So actually, like, the technology to better manipulate this data is super, super important. So that's 3 key changes that I've noticed in the world, I guess, which has helped make way for the LXP. So, the question of this talk, what on earth is an LXP? When I was doing some research for this talk, I actually went online and was like, let's try, is there a definition already? Maybe someone's wrote a definition. There is none. I couldn't find one anyway. There's lots of articles about it and long text. So I tried to stick a definition together. And this is what I came up with. So an LXP is a tool which enables end users, very important, to capture, share, and consume content and knowledge, slightly different things sometimes, from internal and external sources through a means of a personalized and continuously adaptive experience. It is a mouthful, but it's as short as I could get it. And I think it does capture the key things of what is an LXP. However, I'm going to go into a bit more detail here, what does it actually mean? So that's a definition, lovely. What does it actually mean in reality? So there are some key things that you should see in LXPs. The first one, I've talked about this loads already, personalization. And I've put a little subheading here for personalization, but with a purpose. Personalization is not allowing the end user to change the layout of the front page. No one wants to do that. That is not something that people actually find useful and helpful in their day-to-day lives. Personalization with a purpose is about actually better understanding the user and giving them these sort of better content and advice and recommendations based on them as a person. So you can split that into 2 areas, I guess, here. So behavior-based recommendations, that one is all about understanding the user. So okay, who is this person? What are they looking at? What are their friends looking at? What are their team members looking at? Let's try and build up a map of this person and then use that to give them things they didn't even know they needed. And the second one is allowing the user to actually have a say on what they want to see. So that could be, for example, in our LXP, we've got a thing when you log in, it says, what do you want to learn? And what can you teach others? And you just click on these tags. And you see that quite a lot on sites. So news sites, Pinterest does it, which looks beautiful as well. I'm trying to steal their UX for that. But yeah, on Pinterest you go in and it says what are you interested in? You just click all these different things. And it's a really good way to get people to input into what they actually want to see. It might not actually be what they want to see, because sometimes these are different. Sometimes you can say, yeah, I'm really interested in snowboarding and what have you. But actually, what you're looking at is loads of knitting videos. Like, people don't quite understand what they want all the time, which is why the behavior thing's really important. So any LXP absolutely should have this. Second element, learner-led. So back to the thing I said earlier about the admins and the LMSs, the LXP should really be about the learner. So very much pull and push. Lots of my clients and work at the moment are really trying to make a move from push learning to self-directed learning. This is not a new concept. This has been around for ages. I've been in the industry for like 10 or so years now, and I've had clients on the first day of my career wanting to make that move. But it is a bit of a journey, and at the time there wasn't LXPs around to help you with that as well. So I guess the idea here is that you're allowing people to develop at their own pace and their own time, but for that you do need some key features. So you do need a search, so people can find stuff. You need some sort of like discovery thing. You know, like on Spotify, they have a discover page where you can look at like genres and stuff. Like I find that really useful just for browsing around. And obviously then recommendations as well. So although it's kind of like an ethos, like you do need some actual features to help you do that. Speaking of ethos, this is probably a big one in that area. Embracing all content, which is why I've used the word embrace, because it is really about philosophy here. So it's partly about a mindset and a way of thinking, and like, okay, we're not going to just make all our content in-house. We're not just going to take 6 months to create an e-learning course because we've got to scope it, we've got to script it, we've got to talk to people, we've got to test it, we've got to approve it. Like, that's just really inefficient. So how can we actually find content online that maybe isn't as perfect? Maybe there's a shaky camera, but that's absolutely okay, and pull that in. Alongside that, there's also a variety of content types. So generally speaking, LMSs will be face-to-face events, files, e-learning, sometimes other things, but it's quite locked down. Only applicants do stuff. It's quite restricted. Whereas LXP should absolutely help you create other types of content. So, oh, sorry, Mike. For ours, for example, we have got, there we go. So you can add a question, a link, an article, a file, a video, an event, a pathway, a quiz, lots of different content types, basically, is a summary there. And also, I think, no vendor restrictions as well. So you can pull in stuff from YouTube, you can pull in stuff from TED Talks, you can pull in stuff from all these different specialized vendors that you use, because you shouldn't have to need to use one particular vendor for all your content. You should be able to find it everywhere, because there's so much great content out there from all the different providers here. And if you want to take things one step further and be a bit more creative, there's also auto-curation tools, which are really interesting. So we've got an integration with a company called Get Abstract, and also one called Anders Pink. And what Anders Pink does in particular is they actually trawl the web like all the time and pull that content and put it into your site automatically, drip feed it on like a daily basis. This is a really interesting area we're sort of stepping into now, because as you and L&D, it allows you to sit back and just let the content come to you. And also, it's just a really, really great tool for your end users, because they always get that new and relevant content. So that's like, in my experience of clients, I see that like the first step is to like use YouTube and TED Talks, and then maybe other sites that are less outside the remit, and then eventually auto-curation tools is where you want to get to. That's when you've completely like let hold of the reins and you're trusting that the content out there is good. User-generated content, obviously I mentioned this earlier, but this is a key differentiator between an LMS and an LXP. This is a sort of set of features you absolutely will see in an LXP. I could stand here all day and talk about how good UGC is, as you could probably know already. But it really is. Like, the best knowledge in your business is from your employees' heads, from the people actually doing the job. I always use the example of like, everyone's got that one person in your team, and you think, oh my God, if they got hit by a bus tomorrow, we would be absolutely screwed. And that is so true. Everyone has that person, and all the knowledge is in their head, whether it's about the company or the product or whatever it is. And so it's really important to help those people kind of get that information out of their head and actually share it across the business, so you don't have all these silos. And also just save time and resource, on a more practical note. So UGC, as said, is much more trusted as well. So users actually want to see content that is from end users. They want to be able to see it in their own language. They want to, like, if I make a video in L&D about some technical thing in engineering, I'm not going to put it in the right language. Like, I'm just going to sort of reading off a script. It doesn't make any sense. Whereas you get Joe Bloggs in engineering to just do a little video explaining what he does, perfect. The people who are watching that understand the language, they understand the person, sometimes might even know him, be like, oh, it's Joe, he's great, you know. So really important to have tools that allow end-user generated content. You also, I understand that this is a slightly scary area for some people, so most LXPs will have some sort of way to let you control it to a certain extent. So in ours, for example, you can turn off different activities for end users, so maybe you want them to ask questions but not upload videos, for example. However, one thing I would say in this is that when it comes to user content, like, you should absolutely want to avoid any sort of checking authorization process, because that completely destroys the whole point of it. Imagine if someone like vetted all your Facebook posts before they went up, like, you just wouldn't use it. You really need to make sure that LXP has really easy features for people to upload stuff like you would find on Facebook and Instagram, so no barriers, don't give massive forms to fill in, just really quick, really simple, really familiar, and so people can get their knowledge shared quickly and are not scared by it. And finally, this is the final big differentiator, is data. And data is the one that everyone's talking about all the time, and normally making it sound a lot more scary than it actually is. And I'm not saying that LMSs don't track data, because LMSs do. They are very good at tracking data and very good at analytics and very good at reporting. But there are two key differentiators here. One is what they track. So an LMS will track your compliance training, right? It will track your completions. Has someone done that? Excellent. That's perfect. LXPs will track everything else. So they'll track every view, every like, every share, every comment, every thought that your end user has will be tracked by your LXP. So one of the reasons that they do that is that we can. The technology has become more advanced, so it is now possible to track that sort of thing a lot easier. The second reason is that an LMS, as you know, is something that you're told to go to. You have to go to do it, you have to do something. An LXP, people have to want to do it and have to go off their own volition. So with that in mind, you have to keep, I guess, a track of like what people are doing in the site and how they're engaging, and so you can actually adapt to stuff and change stuff and actually make it more relevant to them and blah, blah, blah. So if I just push up my LXP and never look at what anyone does in it, it's going to fail because I'm not actually listening to my users. And this is the same as like every single brand out there, really. So that's the first reason, is the data is slightly different. And then the second reason it's different, the data for the LMS and LXP, is because of, I guess, the way in which it's presented to you. So an LMS will say, here's your data. There you go, Mr. Admin, there is your data. Whereas an LXP will do two things. One, it will actually use your data. So it will collect your data and automatically use it to learn more and to recommend more, that sort of stuff. But also, they tend to present the data in a way that makes it easier for admins to actually make decisions. So rather than saying, here's your data, you work it out in Excel, it actually will make suggestions. So as an example, in our LXP, we've got like everything's based on tags. And we have a tag interface in the admin section. And literally, it will show you most popular tags. And it will also show you who is interested in a certain tag, how many people are skilled in a certain tag, and how many bits of content you've got on that tag. Tags are basically topics, by the way. But what that allows you to do is really quickly see is, oh my goodness, we've got so many people interested in baking, but we have got no content on baking. We need to get some content on baking because everyone's asking for it. Or you could have, oh, everyone's really interested in UX design, but we've got no one who's skilled in UX design. Maybe we should upskill some people so there's some collaboration that can have there. So generally speaking, at LXP, you're going to have better presented data in a much more human understandable format. So that's the key differentiators. There's two other subjects I want to cover off very quickly. So one is it either or? I get asked this a lot by clients. So do I need an LXP? Do I need an LMS? Do I need both? Do they stick together? Do they integrate? Blah, blah, blah. I strongly believe, I know I'm slightly biased, but I strongly believe that LXPs are the new learning platform. It is an evolution in the same way that we drive cars now rather than go around on horse and carriages. It's just natural thing that's happened based on the environment, the technology, and the people and what we want as well. So I do think that if you're investing in a learning platform, LXP is a great way to future-proof yourself. However, you're probably thinking that we still need to do our compliance tracking. Absolutely, that's absolutely fine. What people don't realise is that most LXPs will have LMS features. LMS features aren't that hard, they're pretty easy. So most LXPs will actually have the basic stuff you need to track and do recurrence, porting, and that sort of thing. The reason you don't know about it is I think us LXP providers don't really talk about it much because it's kind of boring, and we would rather talk about all the shiny stuff. However, one thing I would say on this is, just beware of bolt-ons. So naturally, because the market has changed, there's more traditional providers who are obviously looking to sort of change the way they're working and to provide solutions for the LXP market. Absolutely, that's totally what they should do. But in some cases, you find that people are just trying to sort of stick a shiny front end onto an LMS, and in my experience, it doesn't work. I've seen it work sometimes, but like generally speaking, it's not a good thing to do. An LXP is not a shiny front end for an LMS, because all you're really doing there is sort of plastering over something. And the reason I say that is because an LXP, the fundamental internal workings are so different. Like, in order to manage all that data and manipulate that sort of thing, you need to have a really different setup. And I recognise that we were really lucky to be able to do that from scratch, which not all providers are going to be able to do. But in this case, I do think it really necessary. I do think that if you're looking to get into an LXP market, you can't just stick things on your LMS. That's not how it works. Like, you have to have a new system built from scratch. So beware of the bolt-ons. Don't just try and put a shiny front end over it, because your end users will know. They will absolutely know, and it won't give them the right experience they need. And finally, a bit of food for thought on how to support an LXP. So I get lots of questions around this. So you might have done all your research and decided that yes, an LXP is the way to go. That's great for our end users. Amazing. I hope you do. But do you need to think about how you're going to support the LXP? So there's things to think about, like your team. So who's in your team? What are their motivations and their ambitions? So you might have, like traditionally, an L&D team would be sort of face-to-face trainers, L&D admins, learning designers for e-learning maybe, and they absolutely can evolve. Those roles can definitely evolve. I've seen it happen to support LXPs, but the people in the team have to be willing to do that, have to be excited to do it, and not resistant to change. So like when you first introduce LXP, there's always some conversations around, are people willing to learn new skills and that sort of thing. Speaking of skills, the skills that you might find you have to learn are things like content curation and creation. So maybe you're used to creating a lot of e-learning, but now you have to create video and infographics and go online to try and curate content from other sources. Lots of new skills there. Marketing as well, big one. Back to my point earlier about the LXP is something people want to use, not have to use. So you have to market it, you have to promote it, you have to run campaigns, you have to measure stuff. So marketing skills are really important. And then finally, data. You don't need like super data analytics skills, but just being comfortable with data is important, I think, for your team members. And finally, another thing to think about is your culture. That's another subject that I can talk about for days on end. If anyone wants to grab me afterwards to talk about culture, you're very welcome to. But it is important. You'll probably find that your end users are actually one step ahead of you. They're probably already there culture-wise, and they just want the technology to come alongside it. But it is still important to think about, because depending on the industry you're in, obviously cultures are very, very different. Are people ready for that? How do you then change the culture? For me, when I've been implementing these LXPs for like years now, that has always been the biggest challenge. Technology side of things, that's easy. Culture side is really hard, and so you need to think about what steps you're going to take to actually implement this system and change the culture to embrace it, really. So, if you have any questions, one last thing, sorry, on the culture change, that sort of thing, and what you need to support LXP, I've got a bunch of resources around like roles you need and skills you need and that sort of thing. If anyone wants them, please come and see me. And just generally any questions, I'm on stand 36, which is actually just there. So give us a wave, guys. Thank you. Travel. And it's been lovely talking to you, and I hope that was useful.